Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for signing up to come to our ADS lunchtime seminar. My name is Nicky Garland. I'm the Training and Communications Manager here at the ADS. Today's talk is to kind of provide you all the information that you need to know about DOIs. DOIs are becoming more of part of our daily lives in the archaeology and heritage sector, but there is a bit of confusion about what they are and how they can be useful for what we do. So this presentation aims to kind of demystify this process for you a little bit. We're going to give you an introduction to DOIs, how they're useful, what benefits they have, and how they are used by publishers and digital repositories like the ADS. I just want to start by introducing the ADS and what we do for those who aren't aware of us. We are an accredited digital archive for UK-based heritage data based in the Department of Archaeology at the University of York. We have been around for about 28 years now, as of a week or two ago. So we were founded back in 1996, which our director, Julian Richards, likes us to point out is 2 years before Google was founded. So we have had quite a bit of longevity and hopefully some success over that time. We take data from UK-based projects, whether that be from commercial archaeology or from research projects in higher educational institutions. And we now hold more than 3.5 million unique digital objects in more than 300 different formats. So it's quite a vast collection of archaeological data. But the ADS is nothing without the team who work here and all the hard work they put in, some of which who have joined us today. That team is rapidly expanding. As of this week, we're up to about 28, I think. And that represents a vast range of different specialisms, including those who focus on digital preservation, others who look at software development, people who are focusing on research, and myself who look at training and communications. So what does the ADS do today? Well, our core activity is still the long-term preservation of digital data sets provided by archaeologists and heritage practitioners. And we use those data sets to support other people's research and innovation. We allow our collections, or your collections that we care for, to be accessed as an open access resource for you to use for your own research. We have a sibling publication, which you're probably aware of, which is Internet Archaeology. It's a premier open access journal. We are a recommended repository for a number of different UK funding bodies, including the UKRI, and also a number of professional organizations, including the Chartered Institute for Archaeologists. We are part of a number of UK and European research projects as well, including those that aggregate data from different countries across Europe, including the Ariadne portal. So just a brief introduction. Let's start by moving on to our subject of the day, which is DOIs. So let's start by addressing what a DOI actually is. DOI is an acronym that stands for Digital Object Identifier, which simply put is a unique code that persistently identifies and locates content on the internet. That's as simply as I could put it. Hopefully that's clear. But it's worth kind of exploring a little bit about how DOIs fit within the wider kind of infrastructure, because a DOI is just one type of a digital reference, which we call a persistent identifier. Okay, so we're going to explore persistent identifiers first, so it gives you an idea of how DOIs fit within that wider infrastructure. A persistent identifier is sometimes also known by the acronym PID. There's lots of acronyms when it comes to digital preservation and archaeology increasingly. But a persistent identifier is really just a unique and long-lasting reference to a digital object. And that digital object could represent anything, a person, a place, or a thing. Okay, so a good example, which you might already be aware of, are ISBNs. These are the International Standard Book Numbers. So if you've ever bought a book, which I'm sure you all have, and looked on the back, you right next to where the barcode is, you probably would have seen the ISBN number. And this is a unique identifier to every particular book, which specifically identifies that book. So that's a type of persistent identifier. And hopefully that's given you an idea of how DOIs work as well. Another example that's becoming increasingly popular is what's called an ORC ID. So this is an open researcher contributor identifier. So this is a digital identifier that links to people. All of the outputs that you create during your work, whether that be a published article or a data set, can be linked to you as an individual, which is really useful for drawing all of those that information together. And if you are somebody who has a particularly common name, for example, then this is a good way to make sure that your work is referenced to you as an individual. So let's turn back to DOIs. And I'd like to kind of just look at a little bit is how DOIs work. A DOI is very similar to any type of web link, but it consists of three specific aspects, which we call the resolver, the prefix, and the suffix. Okay, the resolver links back to the organization that creates the persistent identifier, which we often call a registration agency. The prefix relates to the organization that registers the DOI. This is a publisher or a digital repository such as the ADS. And finally, the suffix relates specifically to the object itself, whether that's an archive or a journal article or something else. So you can see how this all builds up and how this all links together. And how does it work? Well, it works like any web link. You can copy and paste this link into your web browser and it will take you to the resource, or you can click on the link just as you would do for any web link. And what will happen is it will take you to the unique resource that it identifies, in this case, an ADS collection. It's as simple as that. So you may ask, well, if a DOI works like any web link, then what makes it different from a web link? Well, sorry, skipped a slide. A web link or a web address is usually referred to as a URL or a uniform resource locator. This is an example here that links to an ADS collection. A URL is a little tricky because sometimes it can change over time. You can change the link to that particular website or web page, and therefore it doesn't have the stability that other persistent identifiers have. And it's sometimes is subject to what we call link rot. So link rot is where you've clicked on a link and you get that dreaded 404 error message. I'm sure we've all experienced that. That just means that the original link and the resource it originally pointed to no longer connect to one another. URLs are also quite long, as you can see here. Sometimes they could be very long, sometimes they could be much shorter. Unlike other persistent identifiers, a URL is not linked to any other data. I'll explain that a little bit more detail. It's linked to the resource you're trying to find, but it's not linked to anything else. So it doesn't tell you anything about that resource except for its location. Conversely, a DOI does have that linkage, is both permanent and persistent. It will always direct you to the correct resource, whether that's been moved around on the internet or not. And obviously, this is really useful because it's stable. And for people who work in digital preservation, like us at the ADS, that makes it very useful for ensuring that our resources are stable over the long term. As we've already mentioned, it has a stable standard structure with that prefix and suffix. It's usually a little bit shorter. So the link that you can see here links to the same data set as I showed on the previous page. It's also linked to what we call metadata. So metadata is that contextual information about your digital resource That could be who created it, or when it was created, or how it was created. So this is all like really useful information, particularly if you're thinking about the outputs of research, and you're thinking about citing things, and you're thinking about the trustworthiness of that resource, understanding more about the identifier. So next, let's consider what the benefits are. Beyond a DOI being a little bit more superior to a web link and a little bit more stable, how does this benefit you? How does this benefit your organizations? And how does it benefit organizations like the ADS? The benefits for a data creator, by which I mean someone who writes an article or a report or deposits data with a digital archive, having a DOI means that you can have a permanent identifier for your work. Okay. Now, this identifier is minted by what we call a registration agency. So for DOIs, that's an organization called DataCite. And that means that we have a central repository of all of that data and how it links to your resources. This makes it much easier for you to find and for others to find your data. And it also makes it much more easier to cite as a resource because you have all of that additional metadata attached to it. Finally, because it's easier to view your data set, it's also easier to track your data set, by which I mean to understand how people are using your data. Are they citing your data? This can be useful in a lot of different ways, particularly for researchers, when we're considering the wider impact of what we do. For the general user of a data set, a reliable access point to an article or a data set makes it, again, much easier to find and also much easier to cite. But also having that additional metadata also helps us to trust that data source more, okay? We know the context of that data source. We knew who created it and when, and maybe some more details about how it was created as well. So it allows us to trust that data more than just a general link on the internet. Finally, by tracking DOIs through a registration agency such as DataCite, you can understand how articles and data sets are linked together much more easily. You can see how a particular paper might be cited by others, and this is an extremely powerful research tool. So it has many more benefits for a user as well. Finally, it's worth noting the benefits that it has for digital repositories and publishers, such as the ADS. By using DOIs, we can ensure that the collections that we care for are much easier for people to discover, and we can link that metadata that you provide to us to the data sets that you provide to us as well. That's really important because it allows us to integrate our data sets or the data sets we care for within wider heritage and archaeology data sets. So on a European level, it means we can link into things like Ariadne, for example, the Ariadne portal, and it allows researchers to cross-search all of those different types of data sets. As we mentioned as well, it's easier to track those data sets and understand how people are using them. That's really important for us because we are always trying to encourage people to reuse the data that you put into our care to make it as impactful as possible. And so together, all of these elements kind of link into our approach as an institution, as an advocate for open and fair data. So hopefully I've been able to show you how DOIs work and how they're used and why hopefully they're a positive contribution to archaeology and the heritage sector. So I want to finish today by looking a bit more about how DOIs are used in the wild. How do we use DOIs here at the ADS and Internet Archaeology, and how can you use them in your own research? And I think the first thing to note really is that all of the collections in our care, both for the Archaeology Data Service and Internet Archaeology, uses DOIs. So they are ubiquitous across our platforms. Every data set that we have will have a DOI attached to it, which hopefully makes it easier for you to use and cite. The most typical way a DOI is used in the heritage sector and the archaeology sector is still the citation of any published articles, whether you write them or you're citing somebody else's. Publishers like Internet Archaeology will include a DOI to the citation of that data set. As you can see here in the little red box, the DOI is at the end of the citation for this recent Internet Archaeology article. And if we zoom in a little bit here, you can see how it fits. Typically in a citation, it's usually sat at the end of the citation. And as you can see with the underline, means that it's a clickable link as well. So in this context, you can just copy and paste the entire citation into whatever report or article that you're using. The DOI sits with it, and it will always link back to that article. But it's not just also used for published articles. It can also be used for books and monographs as well. Here's an example that sits in the ADS library, which is a monograph produced by the Surrey County Archaeological Unit. Okay, if we look here at the top where the citation is, you can see the DOI. The DOI is also is also linked here into the metadata at the bottom. So there's multiple citations to the DOI. In this example as well, if we zoom in on the citation itself, you'll see that there's actually a little button that says cite this using DataCite. Because the DOI is linked to a registration agency, in this case DataCite, there are some really powerful things that you can do with it as well. So we link back to the original data registration, and if you click on the little box, it will take you to the website and provide you with some more information about that particular book or monograph or article. It allows you to change the citation style if you like, and you can copy and paste that into your own work. And it also includes a downloadable report which shows how this particular monograph is linked to other elements. So lots of interesting things there that make your article a little bit easier to connect to others. It's also important to note that we can add DOIs to larger collections of data as well. So here's a level up from the monograph we just looked at. And as you can see, there's a DOI for this entire collection. So this is the Spoil Heap monograph series, also produced by Surrey County Council unit. And that monograph we just looked at forms one of multiple monographs within this collection. So you can cite the collection as a whole as well as the individual monograph, which can be quite useful. And it isn't just on collections of monographs. We can look at it in terms of journal collections as well. Here's another example from the ADS library, the journal Archaeologia Eliana, which is the proceedings of the Society of Antiquaries in Newcastle upon Tyne. And as you can see, there's a DOI listed there for the entire journal as well. Each of the articles have their own DOI, but you can link to the journal too, which is useful beyond scholarly works. You could link to this entire journal via your website, and you'd know that it would always be in the same place. We'd be remiss not to also talk about those DOIs and how they link to unpublished works as well. They're not just for publications. We also use them at the ADS to cite our unpublished reports or grey literature, which are created primarily through developer-led archaeology. If your organization submits reports via Oasis, then we upload these reports to the ADS library and we assign them with a DOI. As you can see here, both at the top with the citation and in the metadata there as well. So you'll always know that you can cite back to that particular article, which is great. Finally, we use DOIs to cite data sets submitted to the ADS. So in the ADS archives, we have a huge amount of data sets, which are all the information collected through archaeological investigation. This includes site records, digital photographs, 3D models, specialist data sets, everything people are collecting and submitting with us. It's a vast collection. We have more than 3,500 collections now that people can access. And we use DOIs to cite to those data sets as well. So here's a typical archives page on the ADS. And at the top here, you can see within that red box. If we zoom in a little bit at the citation itself, you can see the DOI here in the small red box. You can also see that some of the names have clickable links that links to their own persistent identifier, their ORC ID. And we also have a clickable box that says how to cite using this DOI. This is a feature that we added to the ADS archives to make it a little bit easier to cite these resources. And if you click the little box, then we have a pop-up which talks a little bit about DOIs and how they work and links to our help pages. But also, more importantly, at the bottom, we have a sample citation for that particular data set. So this will change according to the archive you're looking at, and you can just copy and paste that data set into your report, into your chosen location, and it will include the DOI, which will always link back to what we're looking at. So I hopefully have given you kind of a brief introduction about how DOIs work and how we use them at the ADS. I think the key takeaway is this, that remember your URLs may change over time, but DOIs do endure over the long term. So they're a more persistent choice. And to make sure to use a DOI to link to your data sets, to cite other people's data sets, because that makes our research much easier and much more integrated and linked together. Hope this has been informative, and if you're interested in DOIs and how we use them and you'd like to find out more, we do have resources on the ADS website. Here's a link to the help and guidance page on the ADS website, our Digital Object Identifiers. You can also follow our communication channels where we try to advertise these elements as much as we can via the website, via the ADS newsletter, and via our social media channels as well. This seminar is part of a communications initiative that we are currently undertaking to promote the use of DOIs and to educate users in how DOIs are important and useful. This is just one aspect. There's lots of different information that should be coming your way, blog posts, events, videos, all sorts of things. So keep an eye out on the ADS website for more. There'll be more coming through October and November, and we'll hopefully have an event that's scheduled for November too. So watch this space for more information. I'd just like to thank you for coming and for listening. It's been great to present this, and now is the point where I'll stop recording and you can ask any questions that you may have.